All right. One of my favorite boxers out there talking this stuff. Guillermo Rigondeaux said he will be the pound for pound guy at 118 pounds. And then he's going to move back up to 122 and become the pound for pound champ at 122. Do you know who that puts in his sights? Monster Inoue and Navrati. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. All right, there's a lot of really good boxers and fighters in boxing, but few of them could be considered the greatest fighter in their weight classes this century. And probably, man, I have to go look back. I have to go look back at the 118 and 122 pound divisions, but it is going to be real hard pressed to find somebody better that fought in those divisions that are better than Guillermo Rigondeaux, who is undefeated at 122 and undefeated at 118, and says that he is still fresh, feeling good, is on a hunt to prove he's the best at 118. Now, before we get into this discussion of what it means for Monster Inoue, Mr. Pound for Pound number one, Mr. Pound for Pound top 10, Mr. just got pushed to the limit by an old Nonito Donaire that Guillermo Rigondeaux beat the brakes off of years ago. That that Monster Inoue. Before we get into what that means for Monster Inoue, let me take a couple seconds to say thank you to everybody that supports this channel. Everybody that supports it by watching these videos. We put out 4 videos a day. We really put out one boxing conversation a day. And it usually starts on Monday through Friday. It starts with the live stream where we talk about all the issues and the things that we address in the videos that come out through the day. And then we have videos at 1:15, 3:15, 5:15, and 8:15. So you get a full day's worth of boxing content here because of the people that support in the super chats, the people that support as a channel member, and the people that watch the videos and come and check out OG Boxing Talk on Sunday. That was a longer plug than I had intended. Thank you for your patience, but I really do want to thank you guys very much for your support. Monster Inoue is what people consider to be the top 118 pounder in the world, right? He has, I think he won titles at 115. He's like a 3 division now, something like that. At the I think he got a 115, 118, 112. And when he first came out in boxing, he might have had one down there at 105 or something like that. But if you really know anything about the little weight classes, my opinion, nothing really counts until you get up to around 118 pounds. Until you get to around 118, 122, that's when you really start talking about world-class boxing, right? And the reason I say that is because if you go to BoxRec and look at how many fighters there are at 105, 108, 112, and 115, until you get to 115, there are not 250 active fighters in the world. And when you look through all 200, when you look at the names of the 250 or so fighters in the whole world, you'll find out that about 210 of them only have 1 or 2 fights. So really, you're talking about a very small group of fighters, typically fighting out of Thailand and Japan. Sometimes you'll have some smaller fights like that being organized in Mexico. But for the most part, they're domestic. I consider them to really be domestic level fight weights because you just don't have the breadth of fighters available to fight at those weight classes throughout the world. Because most men, should be obvious, grown men are not 105 pounds, 110 pounds, 112 pounds, 115 pounds, right? It's thin pickings at 118 and 122, right? But until you get to like 135, 140, there you're starting to talk about normal sized human beings. So Guillermo Rigondeaux, and for those smaller weight classes, is one of the guys that has stood out, and I believe has stood out more than anybody else that I've seen this century starting around starting in 2000, not around 2000. From 2000 to 2020, Guillermo Rigondeaux was the class of that. The class of that. Now, he only has one loss, and that loss is against a guy that fought at 130 and eventually moved up to 135 pounds in Vasily Lomachenko. So with Guillermo Rigondeaux, now that enough time has passed by, people really should be able to just look at Lomachenko and the fight with Lomachenko and just take that off his record. Because Monster Inoue is not at 118 pounds. Nobody's asking Monster Inoue to go fight Vasily Lomachenko. Especially when he's 37 years old. Nobody's expecting that out of Monster Inoue. Nobody's thinking of Navarrete, who's the champion, probably considered to be the top guy. Navarrete, excuse me if I'm messing his name up, who's considered to be the top 122 pounder. Nobody's asking him to go up and fight Miguel Berchelt. Right? Go from skip 126, go to 130 and fight Miguel Berchelt. Navarrete's going to get mopped by Miguel Berchelt. It's going to be a knockout, no question about it. Let alone for him to fight a guy like Vasily Lomachenko, who is significantly better fighter than Miguel Berchelt is, in my opinion. So that's why I set the stage with Guillermo Rigondeaux and saying, look, this is an undefeated guy at 122. He's an undefeated, and he was fighting at 122 when he should have been fighting at 180 and 118. The fact that he can move down at this age to 118 and still keep his power it's super impressive. And I'm looking forward to him fighting Monster Inoue. One of the funny things, though, that I saw about Guillermo Rigondeaux in the last couple fights is that he was pulling off some real old school stuff where like if you read a book, I just got done reading a book on Sam Langford, and Sam Langford, who was a turn of the century heavyweight, but really a guy that fought between middleweight and heavyweight. He was like 5'7", maybe 170 pounds, but would regularly fight guys that are 6'2", 6'2", 6'3", 240, 250 pounds, and beat him. But one of the things that he would do in order to make sure people would fight him is that he would carry fighters, right? He would, it'd be like a guy that he could knock out in the first round, but he made sure that he didn't overdo it and made sure the fight went 12 rounds so that he didn't scare people away from him. That's what Guillermo Rigondeaux did in his last two fights against Seha and what was the other guy's name? Seha and Solis. Yeah, it's Solis, where he goes in there fighting, like standing and trading with the guy until he got hurt, right? He wound up getting hurt, but then once he got hurt, he backed up and all of a sudden it was the old Rigondeaux again. The guy couldn't put his hands on him or whatever, but he's pretty much just baiting people for those fights. Now, Nonito Donaire and Monster Inoue had a fight where, Nonito Donaire, who was shot, completely and utterly shot fighter, took Monster Inoue the distance and gashed open Monster Inoue's face. And if Nonito Donaire had any crack left in him whatsoever and wasn't a completely shot fighter, there ain't no way on this planet that Monster Inoue was going to get out of that fight beating Nonito Donaire, because Nonito Donaire showed that he was a much better and a much savvier fighter than Monster Inoue. But Monster Inoue, who is a very solid fighter, is a very good fighter, had very, very fast hands and very good power for 118 pounds, was wound up through basically just brute force and athleticism overcoming Nonito Donaire. Now, Monster Inoue, I promise you, will not say the name of Guillermo Rigondeaux. You will not hear it come out of his mouth, because if Monster Inoue fought Guillermo Rigondeaux, the same night he fought Nonito Donaire, that same guy got it, and that was Guillermo Rigondeaux in that fight. Nonito Donaire would have got knocked out. Nonito Donaire would have probably he wouldn't have had a gash over his eye. He would have had a broken jaw. From the southpaw, slick counterpunching Guillermo Rigondeaux that has all that crack in his shots. You can see it in the last couple fights, dude. When he just sits down on his shots, there's nobody below 122. I don't think there's anybody below 126 pounds that has the one punch power that Guillermo Rigondeaux has. And I think that he's fresh enough to give Monster Inoue to give him that work. But you will not see people pressing Monster Inoue, Nonito Donaire to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux. You already have people, for some crazy reason, Guillermo Rigondeaux is no longer in the pound for pound no longer in the pound for pound. I don't know why that would be the case. He only lost one fight to Vasily Lomachenko, right? Gennady Golovkin is still in the top 10 pound for pound, and he lost to Canelo Alvarez. And lost to Canelo Alvarez going away in my book, but he still remains there. Anyway, it is what it is. I most certainly cannot wait for this fight to take place. I have no false illusions, though, or I have no real illusions, because they're illusions. I have no illusion in my mind that Monster Inoue or these guys that say Monster Inoue is the top guy in the sport is going to want to pick Guillermo Rigondeaux for him to prove it against. And so then back at 122 pounds, I think Navrati is going to have the same amount of work put on him as Monster Inoue would get by Guillermo Rigondeaux. And I would love to see if he would have an opportunity to do a Archie Moore and be, a little guy Archie Moore and get those championships back at the age of 39. By the time these things happen, he will probably be 40. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. Can't wait to see El Chacal back in the ring. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.